library. Last year during summer, I worked at ReadSquared Bible Camp, and one of the things that counselors do is we tell campfire stories or camp stories to help our kids fall asleep. So today I'm going to be telling you one of those stories. So this story is about a monk, but it's also kind of about me because it's like something that happened to me. So like I said, I was working at ReadSquared Bible Camp, and then one day I had an off. So I had some free time. I was just kind of walking around the camp, and I heard some really beautiful music, but I couldn't tell where it was coming from. So I decided to investigate. I started walking around the camp. I went past the horses. I went through the trees. I couldn't find where it was coming from. But I checked my watch and I was like, you know what? I have a lot of time. So I started walking down the highway because I could hear that's where the music was coming from. So I walked for an hour, and I walked for another hour, and the music just kept getting stronger. And it was so beautiful, I really wanted to find out where it was coming from. So I walked a little bit longer, and then I came to a place called Spirit Sands. Maybe some of you guys have been there before. It's basically a lot of sand and sand dunes and stuff like that. And the music was really loud here, so I could tell I was getting really close. So I started walking on the trail, and eventually I saw this huge sandstone house. It had like a beautiful green door. It's 2 stories high, these like white walls, and it was just gleaming, and I could tell this is where the music was coming from. So I walked up to the door, I opened it, and I went inside, and there was a little monk standing there. I was like, hello, can you tell me where this music is coming from? And he said, no, you are not a monk of the music, so I cannot tell you where this music is coming from. But I really needed to know what it was, so I asked him, well, how do I become a monk of the music? And he said, you must pass these 3 challenges. So he pointed to a door and he said, if you want to become a monk of the music, this is the first challenge. So I was like, you know what? I walked all this way. I'm in Spirit Sands, I may as well. So I opened the door, and then I went through, and it was pitch black. And I heard the door click behind me and lock, and I was like, I don't know what's gonna happen, I hope this is gonna be okay. And then the lights all went on, and then I found out I was in a swamp. And there was like logs going over this big body of water, and there was hungry crocodiles snapping. And the weird thing about the logs was they weren't floating on the water, they were floating in air. So they weren't like connected to anything, but they were going over the water. And I could see a yellow door at the end of these logs, so I knew what I had to do was jump across the river. So I looked behind me, and the door was gone, so I knew there was no backing out. So I started on the logs. I just jumped from one log to the other, and you know what? I was feeling pretty good. I was doing okay. The crocodiles hadn't really noticed me yet. So I just kept going, picked up the pace, I was doing fine. Then all of a sudden I slipped, and I landed on a crocodile's back. And they all started coming after me, and I was really scared. But then I was like, you know what? It's gonna be okay. I'm just gonna take a deep breath. And then I looked up, and I saw the logs, and I jumped off the crocodile's back and grabbed onto the log, and I pulled myself up, and the crocodiles didn't get me. And then eventually I made it across to the yellow door without any problems. So I went through the yellow door, and I was back in the sandstone house. And the monk was looking at me, and he was like, how did you make it through that? And I just said, well, I just kept going, and I didn't give up, and I think I'm ready for the next challenge. Okay, today's secret code is, what is that music? So you can put this into the ReadSquared app to get some points. So when you put it in, make sure to capitalize the beginning of each word and have no spaces. And now back to the story. He pointed to a blue door, and he said, if you're sure, you can go through there. So I was like, well, I really need to know where this music is coming from. So I went through the door, and it clicked shut behind me, and then the lights turned on, and I was in a room full of food. All my favorite food, you know? We got like pies and cheese and like grapes, all the good stuff. And I was really hungry because I had just done a big physical feat. I had jumped over all these logs. I was really hungry. So I saw some ham, and I was like, that's good ham, I should eat some of that. So I reached up and I took the ham off a shelf, and all of a sudden, like 30 arrows shot at me and I fell on the floor and I almost got hit. So that's when I realized that the food was a trap. Every time I would take something, something would shoot at me. So then I was very careful. I walked through the center of the room. I didn't take anything, didn't look at anything because I was so hungry. And then I got to the door, I reached up to turn the knob, and then I had to sneeze. I just couldn't hold it in. And so I sneezed really loudly, and a piece of cheese fell off the top shelf, and all of a sudden this big spike ball started rolling towards me. And I was really scared, but I was like, you know what, I'm very close, so I just ran to the door, I opened it, I went through, closed it, and the spike ball smashed into the door behind me. And I was back with the monk. He was surprised to see me. He was getting a little bit mad actually. He didn't expect me to make it through. So he was like, well, are you sure you want to continue? And I said yes. So he pointed me towards a gold door. This was my last challenge. And he said, if you're sure, you can go through there. And then if you complete the challenge, then I can tell you what the music is. So I said, yes, I'm gonna do that. I can do it. I've done all the other challenges. I was feeling pretty good about myself. So I went through the gold door, closed behind me, all the lights were off, and they all came on. And then I saw I was in a room full of bubble wrap. I was in a room full of like broken glass, whoopee cushions on the floor, and there was a librarian sitting there looking at me. And I was like, oh, I'm in a library, I gotta be quiet. So then I knew that the challenge was not to make any noise, but it was very hard because there was like bubble wrap on the floor, broken glass, whoopee cushions, all of that. So I tiptoed very quietly. I had to be very light on my feet because I didn't want to break any of the bubbles. The librarian hadn't noticed me yet. I was going very quietly. I could see there was an emerald door on the other side. So I actually did this challenge pretty well because I had worked in a library before, so I knew how to be quiet. And then I kept going. I made it to the emerald door. I opened it very slowly and it let out a squeak. The librarian looks at me, raises an eyebrow, and I was like, oh no. So I just quickly went through the door and slammed it, and then I made it through. And then the monk saw me. He's like, oh, how did you make it through that challenge? And I was like, I know how to be quiet. It wasn't really that hard. And he's like, well, I mean, you're looking for music, so I guess I just thought you were a loud person. So, no. And then he said, well, you've made it through all the challenges, so I guess I have to show you what the music is coming from. And in the center of the room, there was a gold box. And he led me over to it and he said, what's inside this box is what's making the music. And he opened it up, and then I saw what was making the music. But I can't tell you guys because you guys aren't monks of the music yet. So if you want to find out what's making the noise, you should go to Spirit Sands, and then you can do all the challenges and become a monk of the music. And then you'll know where the beautiful music is coming from like I do.